To start your city silhouette drawing, you'll need a piece of paper, a pencil, and a ruler. First, you can write your name on the back of your paper. Don't forget to write your class code below your name. Then flip it over, and we're going to draw a line across our paper for the bottom of the land. So when you're using your paper, use it landscape style so that it is longer on the bottom and the top and shorter on the sides. So not like this, but like this. We're going to take our ruler and we're going to draw a horizontal line across our paper. I'm going to put this 3 or 4 fingers above the bottom of the paper. We need some space to draw the buildings of our city, and then we want some area above that for the sky. Below we'll have the area that will be the water. So you can think of this as a city on the water. This line isn't really in the middle, but it's just a little bit below. Then you could start drawing your city. So I'm gonna start with the top of the city skyline and make some shapes. So I'm making some rectangles, some buildings that are lower. If there's any specific buildings in your city, you're gonna want to draw those so that it is recognizable. It's good to look at a reference image while you're doing this, but it doesn't have to be exact. I know in San Francisco, there's a building that has a point on it, so I'm drawing that. If your city has a bridge, you can draw that in the background. Now I'm just drawing a quick sketch of mine, but I'm gonna go back and make it much more precise. It should go all the way to the other side of your paper. Now I could be more specific here and draw details on my buildings. Like if I know that there's a rounded building like the Salesforce Tower that's in San Francisco, I could change this a little bit and make it look like that. Or you could make up your own city. It doesn't have to be a famous city. Once you're happy with the way your buildings look, we're going to use a Sharpie and we're going to outline the edge of the buildings and that line across our paper. We're not going to draw any details inside of the buildings. We're just going to leave them as a shape because we're keeping them as a silhouette, which means that we can't see any details on the inside. We can just see the outside shape. And we're going to end up coloring them in black. So now that I've outlined the silhouette shape, I can go ahead and color this in with a Sharpie. So I'm going to color in the entire shape so there is no white inside. It's a silhouette. Once your city skyline is outlined and all colored in with black Sharpie, then we're going to work on adding color to the sky and the water that's below the silhouette. So we're going to be using some washable markers and we're going to turn them into watercolor by adding a little bit of water to them. So I've chosen some cool colors for the water and some warm colors for the sky. If you have a different way to separate your colors, you can do that too. So first we're going to apply the marker to our paper. Notice how I'm adding color in a horizontal direction. So I'm going across my paper and I'm not being super neat with the color. I'm just trying to add some of this pink around and not fill the entire thing in because I'm going to add some other colors on top. You can go right over the Sharpie because Sharpie is permanent marker, so it's okay if you get a little bit of the color on top of the Sharpie. It's not going to show up. So I'm just going to keep adding some layers of different warm colors. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the cool colors for the water that's below my city's silhouette. Notice that I haven't added any water to my paper yet. You should finish using markers first before you add water because it's hard to work around a paper that has water on it. So use the markers first and then you can add water. So now I'm ready to add water where I colored with markers. So you'll need a messy mat for this step, a water cup, and a paintbrush. And we're going to be using some salt, which we will sprinkle on top of the wet area of our paper. And it will create a cool effect with our watercolors that we're going to create. I'm going to start with painting the sky. And notice that when I add just water on top of my markers, it's turning into a watercolor. And I'm just trying to paint back and forth in a horizontal direction across my paper. Some colors might take a little bit longer to blend, but you can see how the ink from the markers start to flow together and create a sunset sky look. Now, while my paper is still wet, I'm going to add a little bit of salt on that area, only where I've added water so far. You need to do this step while your paper is still wet. If you do it when your paper is dry, it's not going to stay on the paper. The salt is going to create some cool spots, and you'll see the color kind of burst out from where the salt was. You'll leave the salt on your paper and you can remove it once it is dry. So I'm adding some water up here, and then I can go ahead and add a little bit of salt. When you're adding salt, it is just a pinch of salt. We are not pouring the salt on our paper. We're just sprinkling the salt on our paper as if we were putting it on our food. We wouldn't dump salt on our food. That wouldn't taste very good. So I'm going to keep doing that until I finish the sky. Now I'm going to move on to the water. I'm making sure to rinse my brush because I don't want to add any of the warm colors to the water. Notice how my paper is curling a little bit. That's just what happens when you add water to watercolor paper, which is a little bit thicker than other art paper. So remember, while the area is still wet and it hasn't dried yet, add a little sprinkle of salt on top. When you're done, make sure you put the lid on your salt container, and then you can take your painting with your messy mat underneath to the drying rack to dry. Don't forget to take your water cup and your paintbrush to the sink. I hope you had fun working on your city skyline silhouette and creating your own watercolors using washable markers and seeing the reaction between watercolors and salt. I can't wait to see how yours turns out.